Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's good to see some familiar names on the chat. And I'm hoping the teachers I interacted with during the last week in Patiala and in Hyderabad have also joined. I noticed a few people were on that. I'm sure most of you know me, Cal. I'd just like to introduce you to Gurpreet, my colleague. Say hi, Gurpreet.
Hi, thank you so much, Cal. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar today.
So Gurpreet works out of the Western region or Gujarat, Rajasthan. I think she's even ventured down as far as Mumbai on there. So she'll be assisting me today. The usual rules, everyone. Please don't put your hands up because there are hundreds of people on the webinar. Gurpreet will just take them down as we go along. If you do have a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. And if we have time towards the end, we will take a couple of those questions. And once again, Gurpreet will monitor that if any questions do come about. The usual thing, I'll be asking some questions as we go along, and be really helpful if you can answer in the chats as we proceed. Okay, so today's session is all about pronunciation. And for those of you who were with us a couple of months ago, we did the first part. We did the sounds of pronunciation. We called it phonics foundations, phonetics foundations. This is the other side of it, where we put those sounds together. And then we're going to look at things like, as it says, stress and emphasis as we go along. So what are we going to do? We're going to cover four main things. We've got four objectives for the next hour or so. And we'll start off by looking at the challenges our students face, particularly with regard to stress, rhythm, and emphasis. And we'll do a quick little exercise based on that. So hopefully you can answer that in the chat. We'll then move on to looking at some techniques that we can utilize in order to teach pronunciation and correct pronunciation errors. We'll look at those techniques and look at the content of what we do and think about, can we integrate it into our lessons? And if time permits, towards the end, we'll just have a quick look about how you can assess students' pronunciation and how you yourself decide how and what to do and cover in pronunciation itself. So let's get going with the first section. As it says there, we're going to explore three components of pronunciation. And we'll start off by doing a little exercise. So there are many issues that students face. I've put in a few examples here. You can see on the screen there are 8 pronunciation challenges that are typical across all grades that our students may face. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give some examples of that. So you have 8 problem areas or challenges, shall we say, and you have 8 examples and descriptions. What I'd like you to do is, in the chat window, can you match them up? So for the first one, the misplaced word stress, okay, which out of those 8 examples or descriptions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, is an example of that? So let's see who can get all 8. I'll give you a minute or two, and there are still people joining the session. And Gurpreet, if you could just monitor the chat for that and let us know if anybody can get all 8 of them. Please don't put just the one, whatever it is, and put them all together. So have a think and you then put it on the chat. And Gurpreet, perhaps you can have a go as well. I won't put you on the spot. I won't ask you, but
Let me do that.
yeah, you'll let us know. Okay. Okay, and by the way, everybody, again, don't put your hand up. I'm going to lower your hand. Yeah, sorry, Gurpreet, you were saying?
I said I cannot multitask today. I have to take a look at the chat first, who puts in the correct answer.
Don't worry about it. Just look at the chat. I'll keep lowering the hands. Yeah. Okay. Sneha has put in something there.
So we're getting it in
monthly.
isolation, like they're attempting one-on-one. Yeah.
A lot of people have done the probably
1C.
straightforward one, number 5.
We got 1C, 4F,
Okay. Let's see if
5D.
anybody can do the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if anybody can get the 6, 7, and 8.
We've got 1, 4, and 5th. Yeah, we
Oh,
got
there's one
Yes,
person.
yes, yes.
Sam, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's somebody else. It's going too quick for me to see the
Pooja
second.
ma'am has also given the complete answer.
Okay, so
Pooja
we've got
Das.
Sam and
Yeah.
Pooja, I think, so
Yeah.
far.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
wait for one more and then we'll sort of go through it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, anybody else? Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so let's go through these. So as I said, these are some of the main issues that students come up with. Okay, so misplaced word stress. Gurpreet, what did most people come up with? Did you keep an eye on that?
Yeah, it's one. They came up with this third option, that is C.
Okay, C, yes. So you have a lot of students, especially if there are words with more than one syllable. Okay, they look at the base word, in this case, photograph, on that, and they may mispronounce it because they're looking for something that is not there. So they end up saying photography instead of photography as well. So we have a misplaced word stress there. What about the second one, Gurpreet? What were the main answers for that one?
I think most of them said second E.
Okay, so let's have a look at that one. Yep, well done. Because that could be anything, and we'll do an example of this later. And we're probably going to use the same sentence as well. Well, let's see how the meaning changes depending on which word you actually emphasize. What about the third one, Gurpreet?
Third, I think it was D, if I'm not wrong. I meant
Okay, it should be
no, it
8
was
for that.
fifth. They said D. Yeah, not the third one.
Yes. Okay. So third one is that voiced and unvoiced. And for those of you who were with us a couple of months ago at the last webinar, remember that's where you actually grip your throat and you can feel the vibration, okay, of the voice box, and that's a voice sound. So a lot of students often mistake these things and they can't voice a sound. What about the silent letter one, Gurpreet? The fourth one.
It's F. F.
Okay, good. Yeah. And the fifth one?
It's D.
Which I think
Most
most
of them have
people
answered
got
D.
straight
Yes.
away on
Yes.
that. What about the sixth one?
Sixth is B, I think. Most of them.
Yeah. And so if anybody is wondering what the tension part of this is, because when you pronounce certain vowel sounds, okay, sometimes your muscles go lax, okay, they relax, okay, but on some vowel sounds, there's a little bit of strengthening, okay, firmness in that, and we call that tension. And what about the seventh one, where consonants
It's
are
B.
together? It's actually
B.
G, I think.
Seventh is G. Okay. Yeah. Seventh is
So
G.
that's where you have the consonants together. And so a lot of people have problems pronouncing that because they can't actually deal with them in close proximity. So they will either put something in. So for example, my father used to say film instead of film because he couldn't actually do the LM. And also they may get rid of something. And so again, my dad always grew up saying toast and not toast because he had problems with that ST sound at the end. And process of elimination must mean that the last one is A. So did Sam and Pooja actually get
Sam
them
and Pooja
correct?
got it right. Yes.
Okay, so well done, guys, for that one. You were quick off the mark. And for the rest of you, this is a quick overview of what the correct ones were. Remember, after this session, by Monday, this session will be on our YouTube channel. So if you need any screen captures, etc., please feel free to log on to that and you can have a look at it once again. So if we're doing that, we're going to look at 3 components. The first one being stress. And what does it essentially mean? It means, as we did last time, you highlight certain syllables in words. With those stressed syllables, you also have some unstressed ones. And how you deal with them and the pattern of this dictates the rhythm of your speech. This in turn has an impact on your fluency and naturalness in communication. So I think I did say at the school yesterday, a lot of people think I speak quickly, but usually all I'm doing is maintaining a rhythm when I'm speaking with the stress and unstressed syllables. And the final thing is the emphasis. So which one of these stressed sounds do you actually focus on? Because that will change the meaning of that. So when we're looking at problems, we mentioned these are the three main areas. And why does it come about? The main one, especially in our region, is because there's a lot of influence from the base language for that. So if I speak Gujarati and Gurpreet, your base language is?
Punjabi.
Punjabi, we will have issues with certain sounds, okay, because they may not exist in Punjabi or Gujarati. Okay, same with other students when they're speaking in Hindi, it could be Urdu, it could be anything. That is a crossover. So the native language influence, some people call it mother tongue influence, has a certain effect. Less so than sounds, but it does have an effect when we're looking at stress, rhythm, and also the emphasis that you place. So because of that, what we have is two sides. Either students don't hear what they should be saying, or they can't produce what they should be saying. And because of that, it helps to add in auditory devices like clapping or clicking your fingers, okay, or tapping a table. You can do all these sorts of things just to give a clue to the student who may not be familiar with that language or with that word, where the stress is. So let's look at them in turn. We'll start off with the word stress, first of all. Okay, so what essentially is it? Many definitions of word stress. A simple one will be something like this. It's just simply where do you focus, where do you put the emphasis if you look at a word and it's got more than one syllable. Okay, so you can see in this word, it's got 6 syllables. In the chat window, you can see that 2 of the syllables I've highlighted, the second and the 5th one. Can you just note down which is the primary focus for this word if you say it? Okay, is it on the second syllable or is it on the 5th syllable? And again, Gurpreet, if you can tell me what people are saying. Where's the primary stress?
Second, Raju ma'am second. Most of them are saying the second one.
Okay, so I gave a visual misclue there because I put the over larger on the second. But if I actually say that, Gurpreet, how would you say this word?
So it would be electrification.
Okay, so Gurpreet emphasized both lek and k. Okay, however, one of them has to be the primary focus. Okay, so if you listen to me say it, electrification. Okay, where did I focus? It was actually the 5th one.
5th one.
So what tends to happen is with longer words, especially at higher levels, when you get a lot of syllables, it's not clear to students which one to focus on. And especially if there are compound words or words like this, if they have suffixes, other words that have prefixes. So this is a good starting point if we're dealing with word stress. To practice with words like those that have prefixes, those that have suffixes, and have base roots or compound words. And that's what we'll look to do. So we're going to have a little detective exercise to practice this. And essentially, all we're going to do is look for the stress in different sets of words, okay? And when you're doing this in class, if you're saying which syllable is stress, okay, it's good for students to say it out loud. Okay, and if they say it out loud, then they feel it. And the other thing that is good to do is either clap or tap. So I'm a tapping person. I don't think you'll pick up the sound, but I'm tapping my table now. But that's a good thing to do when you're teaching word stress. So there's various ways you can do it. I'm going to give you 5 practice sets, okay? And there's a slight different focus on each one, okay? But at the end of the day, they're all focusing on the word stress part of it. So in the first practice set, you can simply ask your students to identify and underline the stress syllables in incomplete words. Now, this enhances their pronunciation skills. And as I mentioned on the previous example, it's good if you choose words with prefixes and roots, because that they can differentiate quite easily. Okay? And if they do that, then it reinforces a couple of other things, both the listening skill, because they're hearing where the syllable is stressed, and also the spelling, because we are working with things like roots and prefixes and suffixes, the affixes as well. So in the chat, can you look at this list and can you add a syllable to some of these words? Okay, you don't have to do all of them, but just add a syllable, hopefully just one. Okay, not multiple. We don't want, 5, 6 syllable words. Just add a syllable to make
We
them
got commotion, complex, photo, computer, communication, common, comfort, recharge, index,
Any for the bottom
renew.
ones? Okay.
Yeah, index, renew, condition, enable, commerce, phonetic, connectivity,
Okay, so there's a
compact,
varied lots. Okay.
exit,
So
example.
basically, okay, thanks, Gurpreet. So if you do something like this, so basically we've got common starts to words there. Some prefixes are quite common there. You just add something to that. One syllable is good because we're focusing on word stress. We're not focusing on vocabulary. And this makes it easier for students to see where the sounds change. And they know there are 2 sounds in this word as opposed to 1. So you do a little framework for that. Once you've done 1 syllable ones, then you can actually do it for different syllables. So I think somebody mentioned, you said, Gurpreet, communication as well.
Yes.
So that's where you can move it to different ones. But by this time, they are looking for the syllables and thinking which one of them is stressed the most. And once they start doing that, if you work with especially prefixes and suffixes, you will start seeing patterns and rules. Okay, so can anybody tell me a rule just looking at this list of 5? Because 4 of them, okay, are quite common. So can anybody put in the chat window? Okay, if there's a rule about the stressed syllable for this one. Before Shun, Dipti, well done.
Shun. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Dipti was the first person to get that. So this is where you can start seeing some rules, and then it's easier to teach word stress doing it that way, because that is a general rule. Okay, if the word ends in a shun sound, and it doesn't have to be the T-I-O-N one, okay, it could be spelled differently, but the pronunciation is the same. Usually the stress is on the previous one. So that's why, because I know that, I can say electrification, the earlier example. Even if there are 2 syllables that are stressed, there is a primary stress to one of them. And then you can finish off by mixing the set. Okay, so you can give the students a list of words. So think back to our user books and think back to the word list that you have before the reading. You have a list of words and we use it for the vocabulary, for the reading exercises or the reading text that's coming up. You can actually do the pronunciation at the same time and do a simple thing with that list and just say, where is the word stress? Because on the list, because predominantly it's for vocabulary, the stress will be in different places. And once you start doing that, then especially at high levels, high grades, you can get to the differences as well. So if you look at the last one, okay, some people actually stress it on the first syllable. Interesting. Some people drop one of the syllables as well and say interesting. Because I'm from Northern England, I personally don't drop it. So where I come from, we actually say interesting. Okay, I actually say the second syllable where a lot of people don't. So this is where it becomes a little bit more difficult for students, and the more practice they get listening to things, the better. So if you've got our units and you do the reading at the start, ask them to go home and do the audio components of that. That will really help them for that auditory discrimination of sounds. So that's one set, okay? You can do the same thing with prefixes by doing something slightly different, okay? So this one, again, focuses on prefixes, but we're linking it to some meanings here. And you can, for example, ask students, can you categorize them in prefixes that mean before or the opposite of something like this or under? Okay, and then they're aware, okay, we're looking at something vocabulary related. Once they've done that, then you can make them aware of certain things, and you can add in compound words as well. Because compound words is quite difficult for students because they can see two distinct words, but they've been put together. Okay, so which one out of those two is actually stressed? So in the first example, we have blackboard, okay, not blackboard. But for students, it's quite difficult to figure that out because they're looking at two separate words. So if you link it with prefixes, they get into the habit of breaking words down and then thinking about it, which one could it be? So the best way to do something like this is to look for those words and you're thinking about parts of speech and the same spelling is there, but depending on how you pronounce it, it becomes a noun or it becomes a verb on that. Okay, so you can see in this case, we've got two examples. If it was a noun, we put record. Okay, if it was a verb, we put record. Okay, Gurpreet, do you want to have a go at the other two?
Yeah, so it says it's a present and present.
Excellent. Okay. So it's easy for me and Gurpreet to do that, but if students just look at the written text, it's a little bit more difficult, and hence we add a sentence. So again, if you look at our material, that's why we add sentences for pronunciation. We don't just do the word in isolation, because the student can then look at the context and think, is it a verb, is it a noun or not? Okay. So the prefix focus, what we can do is look at common prefixes and see how they actually affect the stress pattern if the meaning changes. And it all starts from identifying where it is the stress. And if you do this and the meaning changes, that's where we start adding in the rhythm and emphasis parts of this one. So if we look at another set, okay, something like this set, again, we've got some common prefixes. Some of them we've had already. But if you look at when we actually add it to a word, then the stress syllable changes. And what we can say to students is, can you underline what the stress syllable is when we actually do this particular one? In order to do that, they can break down the word. Okay, so these are the same words, and you can see that they've been split by the individual syllables. What you can also do, okay, once you've done that, is you can actually underline things. So for the visual learner, it becomes clear to them. For the auditory learner, you can actually play the same words. So again, if we think back to our word list that we have in our material, this is easily done because you've got the audio there. And if you're doing a dictation, which you can do on ours, you do it usually for spelling, but you can actually wipe the actual words itself. And why not do an audio exercise, but work on the syllables and just simply ask which syllable is stressed on different ones, okay? So that's the third way that we can do these lists. And once you do that, you can then put it into sentences. Once it's in a sentence, that's where we start doing the fluency aspect and the rhythm. Okay, and obviously, if you exaggerate something, that would be helpful. So we always advise for students to try and exaggerate the stress first and then get it back to a natural form. Because only if they exaggerate will they actually hear something and see this is where the stress is. So if we just take it a little bit different, this is the fourth set. So remember, all these sets are more or less the same. They're just different ways to get across word stress. So what we can do with this one is we have similar word structures. And we've had a couple of examples already. So in this one, it improves both the spoken side, but also the listening, because they're making a difference and differentiating, okay, just by listening to something. So let's have a look at a particular set for this one. So again, you can see that we're looking at particular word types, nouns and verbs, and then we're looking at the stress pattern. Okay, so then eventually the learners will look at all this list of words and think, is it a noun? Is it a verb? Okay. So again, Gurpreet, if you look at the second one, okay,
Yeah.
if you were to say it as a noun, how would you say that one?
It would be permit.
Yes.
And the verb would be permit.
Yes. Okay. So once again, there's a subtle difference there. Okay. Similarly with the third one, okay, produce and produce. So we're getting away from that spelling side of things and we're looking at other things when we're looking at these stress patterns there. So for students, again, you can look at what type of learner they are. Are they a visual learner? Well, why not use some colors, okay, to get them to underline things? Why not, if you're doing a presentation like this, color code certain things? For the kinesthetic one, that's what I meant by tapping. So you can just look at the table and they can just tap with their finger, okay, when they hear the stressed syllable. Okay, some people like to do the clapping and they do the same thing when they actually hear the stressed syllable. So let's come to the fifth one. Okay, this is where you get to more challenging words. Okay, so some that don't follow a pattern, some that may be difficult in meaning. So in this, it's good to annotate certain things, and that's that color coding and also highlighting certain things. Again, if you use our material on those interactive whiteboards, it's quite easy to do these things. Now, the thing about this is it relates to the real world. Okay, and if they manage to get the stress syllable on these sets of words, then their confidence really shoots up. So finish off this. Let's just have a look again at some common ones that we have where the stress pattern, it could be difficult for students for one reason or another. So I've put a list there and it includes less common stress patterns. Okay, so you do this sort of list right at the end, once you've actually done the things with prefixes, suffixes, compounds, the easier set, because these sorts of words are not always obvious for students. Okay. And that's why annotation helps. So you could color code it. You could, as I've done, just put it in bold to make it obvious. Okay, for those kinesthetic learners, it's good to just tap and they hear these things. So if you're doing the audio, you as a teacher can do it as you're actually playing the audio itself. And then as with all of them, it's good to put it in a sentence at the end of this so they actually know, okay, this is how we can use it. And it consolidates the meaning and consolidates the learning that they've had from before. Ultimately, if you do this sort of thing, it really improves confidence. And a good thing to do with this is to actually get them to do 3-4 line dialogues where they're using the words that we've been doing and they create a little role play, or just really a 2-line dialogue is enough. Okay, because the focus again is on pronunciation. Now, remember, there's 2 sides to that. So for all the examples we've done so far, I kept saying, which is the stress syllable? Which is the stress syllable? But if you remember from our earlier part 1, we focused on the schwa. And if you remember, the schwa was that vowel that you reduce. And because you reduce it, it's the most common sound in the English language, because any word with more than one syllable, it has to have that schwa in there. So if we looked at those words electrification and we looked at the vowel sound in each of those syllables, we would reduce them. So the other way to do this, after you think your students have understood word stress, is to ask them to say which syllables are de-stressed, okay, in a particular word. And you can just do a simple example like this. Again, in your word list that you have in the book, you can do something similar. Okay, you can ask for the which one's stressed, but on another chapter, maybe do the opposite and say which syllables are de-stressed. So it's all about recognition. Now, if we do this stressing and de-stressing, then it leads to the rhythm. Because the crucial thing is the unstressed syllables are shorter and quicker. We do that to maintain the rhythm. So if you notice this little sentence, you can see the balls there. The interval between those is more or less uniform. So it doesn't matter how many syllables there are in between there. Now, in order to maintain that uniformity, I, as a native speaker, might do little tricks, like I might not say want to, I might say wanna, because unless I say that, I cannot maintain that stress time pattern. So English is a stress time language because basically the interval between the main stresses is exactly the same, more or less. Then all you have to decide to get to sentence stress is which one of those stressed words do I want to stress the most? And it could be different for all of us. So even if you have a simple sentence like this, there are big clues for students. So you noticed I've highlighted a couple of the words, okay? But in any sentence, you can say to students, you look for two types of words. Okay, one type are content words, and they are predominantly the nouns, main verbs, not auxiliaries, but the main verbs, adjectives and adverbs. They're also the WH question words as well, if you had a question. Everything else you're probably going to say are structure or function words. Okay, they just help bind the language together. So usually 90% of the time, the stress word will be one of the content words. Only if you want to change the meaning will the stress word be one of the function or structure words, the grammar words on there. So in this particular example, you can see that cat is stressed and Matt is stressed. And then I, as the speaker, will decide myself which one will I stress the most, depending on what I want to get across. You can see there's a secondary stress one in the middle, sitting. Okay, so I just stress that a little bit more. So what we're doing now is we're putting the words together to create sentences and phrases. And because of that, that's where the rhythm comes in. So how can you do this in class? You can do many things. Okay, just a few examples. You can get the students to clap to the rhythm. Okay, so if you have a regular beat, okay, and you can just click your fingers like this. Okay, you maintain a regular beat and you ask the students to repeat something as they're actually saying that. You can do the same thing with tapping on a table, or you can do the same thing with clapping. Okay, you maintain a regular beat, and then the students will try to say whatever you're saying, okay, within that beat. You can also do a shift game, and we'll do this in a moment, okay, to say how the meaning changes when we shift the stressed word. Okay, you can also do an identification one, especially if you have the reading passages. So if you do lots of read alouds with our books, or you give it for homework, okay, that's what the students can do, because you've done the reading part, you've done the comprehension part. Why not get them to do something on the pronunciation part, maybe in class or at home? And the final example is a good one where the students pass the sentences around. Okay, and they have to maintain the same rhythm. Okay, so it takes the same amount of time to say that, okay, as they go around. So they sit in a little circle. There's one sentence there. It could be written, it could just be remembered, and they just say it around a particular circle. So we were talking about the emphasis part of things and about how it shifts the focus in a sentence. So let's have a look at that. So Gurpreet, if you could play the little girl on this, how would you say what she's saying?
Okay. I didn't say she stole the money.
Who did then? Now, Gurpreet could have said, if you like, those 7 words, I'm saying the contraction as one word, didn't, in many, many different ways. And each one would change the meaning of what she's actually implying. So the same phrase is there, but you notice that I've highlighted different words here. So at home, you have a go at this. Gurpreet, if you could say each of those 6 sentences, but can you highlight the word in red, okay, with your
Okay.
voice?
I didn't say she stole the money. I didn't say she stole the money. I didn't say he stole the money. I didn't say she stole the money. I didn't say she stole the money. I didn't say she stole the money.
Okay, well done. Okay, that's pretty good. So when we're doing that, okay, you can just pick out a simple sentence from one of your books, okay, and just do a simple exercise like that, like this. So before I said, you usually emphasize content words 90% of the time, but you'll see in this that we're emphasizing both sides of that, both content and structure words. So why do we do this? Okay, we get the students to try to read each version aloud and then just ask them what changes when you shift the emphasis. And once we do that, we can do that with lots of dialogues, okay? Or we can do that even when we're doing pair work in class, when we're doing classroom exchanges. If we do this particular one, we can do it related to emotions as well. So if we take this sentence and just analyze each sentence one by one, if you're going to emphasize that I, okay, well, there's an implication there. Okay, it just simply clarifies that I'm saying this as opposed to somebody else there. And what's the impact on meaning? It shifts the meaning. Okay, so the responsibility is basically changed to one person as opposed to another person. But what happens if we do the second word and highlight that one? Emphasizing didn't, again, changes the meaning because you're basically saying it wasn't me, okay, or I didn't do it, okay? So don't suggest that I did. So you're either going to clarify something or you're going to say, well, actually, no, you're wrong, okay? And we're just simply doing that by doing that second word and emphasizing. If we're going to do the verb, okay, the say, what we're saying is, what have I actually said? Okay, and what's the implication? Have I said it or haven't I said it as well? So that's a fine nuance. And this is obviously where students find difficulty if their home environment isn't in English or they're not surrounded by English as well. How can we pick this up? We can do direct statements, or when you're doing indirect speech as well, you can actually put a focus on pronunciation subtly on that, because the structure of the sentences, okay, will be good to actually do something like this. If we do she, so we've got that pronoun there, emphasizing that, again, shifts the focus because you're implying, okay, somebody else may be responsible for that. So we're redirecting, if you like, the blame or the attention. And again, the change is changing the meaning of the overall sentence itself. We're looking at stole, okay, the verb itself. That again distinguishes between different actions and what you're doing with the money. And also it can say, okay, how severe something is or not. So you can do this sort of thing if you're teaching verbs, okay, you've got an example sentence and just do a framework and change that verb as well, or change the degree of the verb. So stole obviously means something, but can you do synonyms for that are not as powerful as stole or less powerful than stole as well? And then again, you can change the voice in doing that. And finally, the objects of this particular sentence, they just basically suggest, okay, in this case, it's money, but it could be something else. So just by picking up a simple sentence, we can do many, many things. And a good way to reinforce this, okay, is also if you get little video clips. So if you look at something like this one.
You're always eating my food.
It was my sandwich.
Okay, so it's just an excerpt from a TV program. And if you look at the website, Learn English with TV series, there's lots of these that surround education itself. Okay, so out of those 4 words, it was my sandwich. Can you just put in the chat, which one did he stress the most? Okay, out of those 4 words.
My.
Yeah, I think everybody got it. And how do we
Yeah.
know this? Because he exaggerated it. So if you do something like this with students, they pick it up quite quickly because there's always an exaggeration and you've got those visual clues in addition to that. So we talked about what the problem areas are. We've looked at stress, emphasis, rhythm as well. And what could we do as teachers? What sorts of techniques can we utilize to help us? Well, gestures are great. Okay, now we're not doing intonation today, but they're good for intonation, but also stress, because you can do this with your finger up and down as a sentence is being said. We've mentioned this before about color coding, okay, and also stress maps were like those little visuals you saw, where visually you show something where the stress is, whether it was the oval shape or the squares with the cat sat on the mat. You can also have audio ones. We've just listened to an audio there, but you can have other audio prompts that can emphasize stress in addition to the usual things. Now, if you're visualizing it, if you use your hand gesture, as I said, you can do your finger for rising, falling stress. You can do the whole hand. So a visual learner can actually see that as well. If they're kinesthetic, you can do the same thing with your finger, but you can also tap. Okay, so they hear it. You can tap a table and do something similar for that one. Now, doing gestures is immediate feedback because it's visual, they can see that, and they know straight away, okay, what's been going on. So color coding and phonetic charts are good. If you remember the first part we did the phonetic chart, the IPA, but there was also another one that you can download from many sites for free, and that shows visuals in there. So for younger learners, it's actually quite good for them to do those visual phonetic charts rather than the ones with just the symbols there. Audio recordings are great, and it might not just be a model for the students. Maybe, if you look at our reading, there's lots of audio models there, but you can record the students as well. You can record things online, offline, and you can utilize those with native speakers. Lots of games you can play. Okay, bingo is a great one. Again, if you look at our material, you look at the Pronunciation Plus, there's lots of games on the Pronunciation Plus side of that. Okay, and you'll notice a lot of audio clips there where they've got to match something, guess something, okay, write something as well. So pronunciation bingo can also be done there. Why do we do all these? And especially if it's like our Pronunciation Plus app, because then there's a degree of independence. They're not dependent on what is done in a classroom. They can do it themselves away from the classroom. There's lots of interactive activities that you can do. So you can do a gesture mirror activity by essentially just standing in front of a mirror, okay, when you get home. But in class, the students can look at you and you can mimic something, especially with the sounds and if it is stress with what you're doing with your hands. Stress maps are good, and we saw those earlier. Again, they can visually see that, and we've talked about the bingo and audio matching. Also, visualizing a sentence is good. If you're doing a read aloud, and if you get people to close their eyes and you just isolate a sentence, then you can actually ask them to draw it. Okay, and that's an easy way to visualize a particular stress pattern. There's lots of things you can do with the mouth, okay, because a lot of it does come from the mouth. Now, this is more important for the sounds we did, okay, in isolation, but you can still use it a little bit for the stressing side of things. So why do you do this? Because it improves their pronunciation, okay, and articulation, because you tend to exaggerate when you ask somebody to look at somebody's mouth and they're mimicking something. They also become aware about how to say things because they're looking at somebody else doing it. Okay, and if there's phonemes that are very close together, you can distinguish them just from the mouth shape, in addition to many other things. So if it incorporates visual aids, that's all the better for that. Now, we did this sort of exercise, and this is a good one to do, whether you do it for sentences, whether you do it for nursery rhymes, whether you do it for words. You just get the kids lined up opposite each other, make sure there's a bit of a distance, and then just get them to mouth the words. By mouthing the words, there's nothing else to go on except the visual element. So students tend to look intently at the other person. Okay, and if I say something like ship and sheep, okay, they may see that it takes longer for me to say the second one, although the mouth shapes are the same. And they may get one is a short vowel, one is a long vowel sound as well. So when you're doing something like this, think about, okay, which sets of sounds do my kids have problems with? And can I do it from the mouth or gestures, but especially the mouth one? So this is a good one. If you do the sh, sh, if they're mistaking those two and mixing them up, then there's a big difference. They can't see the tongue, but they can definitely see the rounded lips if the sh is there. Again, have a go at this at home if we're all doing this alongside me. Again, with the l, r, l, r, l, r. There's very little that you can see on the mouth one, but you can actually do the gesture, okay? And you can actually do with the alveolar ridge, sorry. You can do the teeth and you can say, where does it touch? Does it touch below or is it curled back tongue? And also gesture icons help a lot. So if we think about those icons, this is an easy thing for students to do. They just get an icon and under the sentence or over the sentence, they just mark the stress. This is a bit extreme. It will take too long to actually draw the lips, okay? But they can do a little simple icon and they can mark where the stress is. For that other example with l, r, it's good to do a visual like this, a side cutout. Okay, and it has most of the articulators there. It has the tongue, it has the teeth, it has the lips, and it has the alveolar ridge, which is the bit just behind the teeth and at the roof of your mouth as well. And then all you ask students to do is, what do you think's happening with everything? Okay, where's the tongue touching? Is it the tip of the tongue? Is it the back of the tongue? Is it the middle of the tongue? You can go further. If you go on the internet, for all these sounds, there's lots of images available. Okay, so especially for the kinesthetic learner or the visual learner, these images are good to see in addition to everything else. Now, if you put everything together, essentially we're linking it to connected speech. Okay, so what is connected speech? Is when you're blending things together. So how do we blend things together? We can do one of three things. Okay, there's other things, but we'll just concentrate on three things. Okay, the first one is elision, when you get rid of something. The second one is linking, which we did last time, when you're connecting sounds together. And the third one is assimilation, okay, where the neighbors affect, okay, how you say something. So if we look at elision, you can do this yourself at home. Have a go at saying friendship. Okay, now if you're being in a formal environment, you're doing a speech, you might say fully friendship. But if you're just speaking naturally, you tend to drop the D and end up saying friendship. We did linking last week. There are 3 rules to that linking, and we just link those words together so it sounds like one particular word. And the assimilation is, if you think about good and the end sound duh, and go on to boy, good boy, there's very little movement between the two. So because there's very little movement, we tend to, one side gets affected by the other and it gets influenced. And that's what assimilation is. So why is it important? Because if they master connected speech, it helps them understand people like me. It helps them understand the material. It helps them understand YouTube, etc. But also it helps them speak in a more natural way if they understand those rules. So if we look at those 3 things, elision first of all. So what gets dropped? We did that example. There's many examples. Okay, next day, have a go at saying it yourself. And why do we drop it? It's because if you think about the t and d, they're very close together in your mouth. Next day. So it's a fluid movement that you do from one word to the next. Why do we do it? It just becomes natural, your speech, and it becomes very clear. And obviously, it helps the listening side of things. So it involves recognition as well as the production of things. How do we do this as teachers? You need to make sure they do lots of practice and repetition through those listening exercises. So we have a lot of listening exercises. We do it for comprehension, yes, but again, why not use them for a bit of pronunciation as well? Linking we did in depth last time, but just to maybe summarize, remember you linked certain things together. We did the consonant sound and the vowel sound, the end of one word, the start of another. The end of one word is a vowel sound, the next word, it starts with a vowel sound. And also consonant sound at the end and a consonant sound at the beginning. They could be the same or they could be similar. We did many examples, take it, go out, okay? And why do we do this? Because it improves the fluency. That's the crucial thing about this. Lots of ways you can do that. You can do it visually, you can do it via audio, you can do examples while you're teaching something else. If it just occurs to you, you're doing some grammar, vocabulary, you can easily do that. If we do a visual example, okay, so Gurpreet, how would you say this one?
Did you take a pen?
Okay, fantastic. So if I break down what Gurpreet's just said, you can overanalyze it. Now, the first two parts follow the rule, okay? But if you look at the last one, it doesn't really follow the rule that we've just done. But if you say the whole thing together, take a pen, you tend to drop the H of the her, you tend to drop the R, okay, from that. So it almost is like a vowel sound in between. And if it's a vowel sound, then you're left with the consonant sound of k, with take, okay? And if you do the k, p, you're just blending it in. So take a pen.
No.
So a good thing to do with some example like this is why not ask students to draw it in a waveform? Where is the stress? Another thing you can do is do a multiple choice and give them an option. How many sounds did you hear? So if you're doing those listening exercises, you've got a question there and you've got the answer. You've got the answer, you've done it for comprehension, then play it again. And just say, by the way, how many sounds did you hear? And then you can start analyzing, why did you hear 3? Why did you hear 4? Why did you hear 5? So elision, linking, reduction, it all goes together there. So if we're talking about the practice side of things, okay, how can we do that? Listening is great for that. Doing interactive audio elements as well. So you have a lot of those clickable audio buttons. You can ask students to visualize something, draw it, or you can just put a little symbol where they think the stress is in a particular sentence or a particular word. The best thing to do is if you get the students to record themselves, okay? Because remember, in our app, they can record all the sentences, they can play it back, and when they do the pronunciation corrections via Pronunciation Plus, they will hear all their sentences that they've recorded. And again, they can do something else. Why don't they compare what the correct one is, a native speaker example, with their own one, and not just for the accuracy parts of the words themselves? So we mentioned, how do we integrate it? It's quite straightforward. You just try to do it as many times as you can. Why would you do that? Because then they don't notice. Okay, it just is automatically embedded in your day-to-day lessons. So you have lots of role plays you do. Younger grades, you do lots of songs. The middle grades, you do lots of chants there. While you're doing that, just add a pronunciation slant to that. And a lot of these things, songs, chants, we've put a lot of our poems, okay, to music. We've put a lot of poems on the audio as well. They just go naturally with rhythm and stress practice. Lots of other things you can do. We did a few examples last week of tongue twisters, but especially the reading aloud. You can do a lot of these in your normal day-to-day teaching activities. So final question today on the chat. If I look at something like this, can you put on the chat what pronunciation activities could you do, okay, if you have something like this? Okay, you've got some text, it's a normal text. What pronunciation activities could you do to make students practice pronunciation? And it could be anything. Okay, so let's have your ideas. This.
Role play, poetry recitation,
That's a good one. I think
skit,
most people are putting
yeah,
role plays and
role play,
skits, a
stress
bit
on
of
different
drama.
syllables, flip
Yeah,
class, drama, picture talk,
yeah. Poetry
read
came in.
aloud.
Yeah, so, you know, there's many of those examples. So you don't have to do anything radically different. If you're doing a read aloud anyway, you can add in these pronunciation elements. People said a skit, you know, the role play one of the scenes. You've got lots of dialogue here as well. While you're doing that, you can do that non-verbal things, but if you do the non-verbal, the emphasis comes automatically. Okay, which word do I want to stress in that particular sentence? How do I go about it? You can also pick out certain bits of it and do hook lines and chants. So you have a framework here where you substitute the verb, you substitute maybe the noun, and can you say something else? And look for the ones that have a lot of punctuation. Okay, that's usually the easiest ones that you can do for that. So we mentioned role play dialogues. Try to do that all the time. It's nice and interactive. You can also do a lesson planning challenge. Somebody said a flip class. Okay, so I'll just extend what they said and just invite the students to design short lesson segments focusing on pronunciation. So whoever put that flip class, great idea. You can just do it in reverse. Pronunciation corners we'll do in a moment, okay? That varies it, and you can give a different focus for different types of learner. And that all leads into peer teaching itself. So if we have an example, let's say you have your word list, we can do our normal, okay? We can look at vowel sounds, consonant sounds, and we can look at which ones are easily understandable. We can look for those words with more than one syllable, or let's look at some word stress on this one. If you record that bit at the bottom of pronunciation plus, you've got a whole sentence. Let's practice sentence level stress, okay? Is the speech I'm doing, is what I'm saying smooth and rhythmic? Okay, do I hesitate? What do I do? So we've got 6 distinct things we can just do with a simple sentence. So then what you can do is you can go into your classroom and for each corner or each part of the classroom, have 6 sections and have the students do something connected with pronunciation in each of those different sections and have them move around. Okay, so make them play something. And in the first one, identify the vowel and consonant sounds. Can you say it? The other one, have them listen to something. Can you easily understand that? Third one, where's the word stress? Fourth one, where's the sentence stress, etc., etc. So it's an easy way to actually incorporate that. If you're going to segment and partition your particular lesson, make sure you know what pronunciation goal you're aiming at. Try to use authentic materials. I played a little video clip earlier. Okay, that site is a great one for authentic materials because at the end of the day, they have to be able to do that. You can't slow things down all the time. Try to do it when you're teaching vocab and grammar. You know, you have lots of example sentences when you're doing grammar. Okay, you might be doing a perfect tense, but use that sentence and let's analyze it for pronunciation. And then obviously you can assess and give feedback. So just to finish off, if you're assessing pronunciation, you can do it in a formative manner, and that's just ongoing. You have that peer feedback and self-assessment checklist, let's say. You can do it at the end of a period. And in that sense, you might have to have some rubrics there. You might have their recording and analyze it. You might even do quizzes. Why do we do this? Because they will slowly improve over time. And that's why we need to do that and highlight it at appropriate timings. How can students do it? You can do lots of peer review circles. So give each student a focus. You are in charge of stress. You are in charge of pronunciation of consonant sounds. You are in charge of pronunciation of vowel sounds. And make sure you give that person the responsibility who is good at it, because then they'll be able to recognize that. On an individual lesson level, make sure they have their own portfolio. Make sure you give them a checklist and rubrics to assess against as well. And audio journals are great to do. Okay, they don't have to write anything in this. They can just keep recording it. And if you've got our app, it automatically is done for you as well. Finally, as a teacher, you have to think, what am I actually going to focus on? We've done a couple of webinars now on one, the sounds. And on this side, we talked about sounds together and talked about stress, emphasis, and things like that. But you should think, and I just put some examples there, but you should think, what are the main issues in my class and what are the things I want to focus on? And then just do an A, B, C, D and put either yes, no, or I'm not sure. So if it's an A, I teach my students to be able to recognize this, then you teach it. Okay, if you're not interested in something, then don't teach it. Okay, if you're not sure, maybe it will migrate to a yes. So put down different sections and then think to yourself, which one am I going to focus on? So just to summarize, think about connected speech, think about what goes into it, think about how you're going to practice. You can practice in all sorts of different ways. And what tips are you going to utilize, okay, to take something forward? Okay, so I'm not sure if we have time for any questions, Gurpreet. Were there any questions?
So we do have two questions that I would like to
let's do a quick
pick up.
two.
Yeah,
We're
yes.
only 1
So
minute
the
over.
first one is, Cal, can you elaborate something about diphthongs?
Diphthongs was from last one. I would first of all suggest to that person, have a look at our YouTube channel. Look at the webinar, the previous one on phonetics foundations, and it's explained in depth there. But essentially, diphthongs are simply two vowel sounds that are joined together. They're joined together because there's very little movement in the mouth to do that one. So it's just two single vowel sounds joined together. And if you look at the phonemic chart, you'll see two symbols because of that.
Thank you, Cal. And the second one is how to work on MTI.
MTI, I think we covered quite a lot there, all the strategies we talked about on that. But identify, okay, what is the problem area? And it could be anything. So for example, where I'm based, it could be the sh sound. So you would focus on correcting that particular sound, and that will influence that. Other people, it could be word stress. Okay, and other people, it could be they don't have a nasal sound in their native language. Okay, so how do I introduce that? Okay, so I would say to that, it depends on what the mother tongue influence is. Okay, but once again, we did touch upon that a little bit. If you teach them to speak correctly, also to hear correctly, then I think that will be taken care of. But remember, it's not going to be 100%. So even if I speak a language like French, I'll still have an accent. So don't mistake MTI with accent. The crucial thing is, are you clear? Okay? Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Gurpreet, thank you so much for the help on that. And thank you for saying the sentences. Okay.